Welcome back to my channel. This is Ghost from Ghost Consultant, and in this video we will continue our environment setup for Forcepoint. Now we'll walk through the initial configuration of our DLP solution step by step. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Before we start, I would just like to update you guys a little about the environment changes. There are some minor and some major changes. So first thing first, I've just moved all my virtual machines from VMware to Hyper-V from Microsoft since I was facing some issues in VMware. Now, due to that, you might see some infra details being changed. Secondly, from our last Forcepoint video, I have gone ahead and installed the web component as well. From the installation perspective, while we selected our data component, we just installed the web component here itself. The initial configuration, while you have just installed the Forcepoint DLP, would consist of two parts. First is something called as the configuration change, which is on the whole console itself. And then there is specific changes on the modules that we are going to do. Like I said, this is for data loss prevention. So we are just going to deal with the settings for data loss prevention solution as of now. So first, click on the gear icon from the top right. This will lead you to the configuration panel. Now this configuration panel or page, you would like to call it, is the global settings and is not specific to DLP only. You can configure both of your modules, or even if you have the email module, you can configure it from here. So we'll start by hovering over the general button and going on to user directory. This is where you are going to configure your LDAP user directory to add other security manager for the administration purpose via the network accounts. So in order to do that, you can select different types of directory services. We are going to use Active Directory since I'm using Microsoft Active Directory. We are going to provide our IP, and the port is going to be same 3268. You can also use the secure port if you would like, but just make sure that the ports are open across the environment. Now this is the user who is going to connect to the Active Directory to fetch the usernames. Now, just to do a quick check again, I'm going to enter my password and show it to you guys. So once you've entered your details, make sure to click on test connection and you should see a test connection succeeded. Now, once verified that it's here, go ahead and click on OK so that the changes are saved. You should also see a message saying your changes were saved. Next, move on to the administration sections. And in here, you're going to add your account. As you can see, I have already added my admin account, but just to showcase it to you guys, how we can do it, you can come down here, click on add network account, and it's going to fetch all the details from your Active Directory. Now I don't have many users, but I've just created this SMTP user that we're going to use further ahead in the video. But you can select this, add here, provide the permissions. So as you can see, if you select this checkbox, it's a global security administrator. And if you read the description, it gives full administrative access to all policy, reporting, configuration, and account administration setting. The keyword here is for all security manager modules, which means for your DLP as well as your web security. Now, if you wanted specific admin accounts just for DLP, you're going to unselect this box. And then you can select on the DLP, grant access to this module, and you can click on OK. Now, I don't want to add this account, so I'm going to click on cancel. However, while you're doing it, make sure to click on OK, and you should get the account here. The next option is notifications. So make sure to configure this if you'd like to get a notification every time a new security administrator has been added, or maybe something has been changed on their account. To do that, we are just going to select mail server type, other mail server. We are going to provide our IP of our exchange. It will communicate on port 25. Now these are the email notification templates that you will receive or the administrator will receive. Depending on what kind of action it is, you can see there are multiple notification templates. You can customize it as well. Once you've done that, click on OK. Since I have not made any changes, I'll just click on cancel here. Now, the next two options, even though we are not going to cover in our lab environment, but you could totally deploy it on your production environments. The first one is two-factor authentication, where it uses an RSA secure ID authentication. And the other one is single sign-on using SAML 2.0 protocol. Now, since we don't have both of these resources in our lab environment currently, we can't configure it. But if you have it in your environment, make sure to enable it so that you get more security control for your admin access. Now, once you've completed this, you are done with the global configuration, and we are going to move ahead with module specific configuration. So we are going to come back onto the data module from the top left. Now, starting from under settings, general, hover over the general tab, click on backup. We are going to start up with the backup procedure. So the backups are ran using Windows task scheduler. If I just go on and search for task scheduler and click on task scheduler library, you will see these are all my tasks. So the primary task, this is WebSense Triton backup, which is for the EIP backup. As you can see in the action, it's going to run a cscript.exe, which performs an EIP backup.vbs. So it runs at 12 AM every Sunday. The other backup that we are going to deal with is the WebSense Triton AP-data backup. Now this is your CPS backup, which is basically a DS backup, where we are going to back up all of our settings, all of our policies and everything. So this also runs at 12 AM every Sunday. Now, if you want to change your backup procedure, maybe the schedule of the backup, you can select the backup type, click on properties, come on to the triggers tab and edit this one, and you can perform the backup as per your organizational need. Once we are back on the console, now I've provided a folder path where the backup is going to be kept. As you can see, this should be reachable by the FSM. So for that reason, I've created a local copy. As you can see, I've already ran one of my backup, and you can get the backup logs from here. You can scroll down to the bottom just to verify. You should get a backup finished. That means the backup was completed successfully. So just ensure wherever the path is, it should be reachable from your FSM server. That's why I've created the backup locally. As per the best practices, it should be somewhere not local on the server, so that just in case if your application or your server crashes, you have a backup somewhere where it can be retrieved from. Moving ahead, you're going to provide the credentials. So if it is, since it's a local share, obviously I'll have the permissions. But if it was somewhere across the network, we'll have to provide the account which should have the access. In the tab where you see, do you want to include forensics in the backup? We have not selected it because we are storing the forensics in a different directory, and we don't want to have that network traffic moving on to the FSM server because it's going to take a lot of network bandwidth, which we don't want. All right, so once you have done this, make sure to click on OK. I've already done it, so I don't want to save it. Moving ahead, the next option that we are going to work with is the remediation tab. This is where you are going to configure your syslog server to get all the logs from the FSM server to your SIM server. Now currently we don't have a SIM environment, that's why it's empty. But if you have it in your environment, make sure to provide the IP, do a test connection and click on OK. Release quarantined email. Now quarantining of emails are an action plan which is part of the network DLP. Currently we are just dealing with endpoint DLP for beginning. We are not going to cover this, but in the future when we have an email security appliance in place, I'm going to come back to this setting. So once you've configured your syslog server, click on OK, and then you can click on save. The next thing that we're going to look at is the mail servers. Now, on the outgoing mail server, this is where the notifications are going to be sent out. As you can see in the description, indicates which mail server the system should use to send outgoing notification messages, alerts, scheduled tasks, and discovery task email reports. So as you can see here, I've configured my Exchange. I can do a test connection and send an email. And as you can see, connection is successful. Just to showcase it to you guys, if it was a not success, as you can see, if you provide the wrong IP, you will get an alert message saying that sender email address or outgoing mail server credentials are incorrect. I'm going to just revert back to my settings, do a test connection again if you would like, but you are going to save the settings once you've made the changes. So I'm just going to click on OK, and my changes have been saved. All right, the next thing is the alerts. Now in the alerts, we don't need to change anything specifically here. You can select the type of alerts you want to get an email for, and on the email property you can provide the sender name, the sender email address, and the outgoing mail server is going to be picked by our email server, which we have configured in the mail servers tab. The sender email address doesn't need to have a mailbox attached. You can add any address here. And once you've configured this, click on OK to save your settings. The next thing that we're going to deal with is the archive storage. The archive storage is used to specify where you are going to store the incident archive. Now I've selected store archive remotely because I want to store it in a remote location. Now when I've selected this, I need to ensure two things. First, the shared path, which is this folder, should be accessible from the FSM as well as your SQL server, and it should have sufficient storage to store the logs. Now as you can see, this is my IP where I'm going to store the logs. If I do a run and if I drop it down, you can see that I have a shared folder which is accessible from here, and it's also accessible from my database because this is my database server itself. All right, so once you've done that, you can do a test connection. Make sure you see the connection succeeded message. Once you've done that, click on OK so that the changes are saved. Now the last thing that we're going to see here is the user directories. The user directory is used to import Forcepoint DLP users and other policy resource like your devices and your computers, your groups from your Active Directory. Now to do this, you can click on New, provide a name for it, provide what type of entry it is. If it's an Active Directory, it can also accept CSV file format, and it can also connect with Domino server. Since we are using Active Directory, we are going to select this, provide the IP address, provide the username which is going to connect to the Active Directory and its password, and do a test connection. I'll just show you one of the settings that I did. As you can see, AD import. Now again, I've selected Active Directory. This is my IP address, my username. I'm going to provide my password just to showcase a test connection. And test connection, as you can see, test connection succeeded, and you can click on OK. Now once you have done that in your environment, you will see that the last import would have a status of NA. As you can also see, my last import was on 23rd August. There's an activity which runs to perform this daily. If you don't want to do it daily, you can do it weekly as well. Now to run the import service, you're going to click here and do an import now. You'll get a warning message. You can click on OK, and as you can see, my import is now pending. Now depending on your Active Directory content, it might take some time. As you can see, mine was just completed with 96 entries. Since I have very low entries, it's going to complete very quick, but for you it might take around 4 to 5 minutes to complete as well. Now this was the last settings in the general tab. We are also going to look into the services, but maybe in a future video where we are going to integrate our Bold and James classifier with our DLP solution. Now the last setting that we are going to look into in this video is under system modules. So deployment system modules, we are going to expand it, and we are going to select forensic repository. Now a repository is used to store evidence of any DLP violation. So when I say evidence, it means the actual file itself which was used or which was shared across the environment, which violates a DLP policy. So since we are storing the whole file itself, the forensic repository might require a lot of space. So make sure when you are sizing your forensic repository, you take into context your users, the number of transactions they might be violating, in what phase of DLP deployment you are. If you are in the early phase, chances are a lot of policy would be in fine-tuning mode, or it might give you a lot of false positive, but we need to ensure we have the file for analysis. So it might require to have a storage of 500 GB. In my lab, since I'm going to have a single user, I believe 50 GB should be more than enough. And at any point I can delete the forensic repository for myself, since it's a lab environment and I don't need to store it indefinitely. Now, so for that reason, I would highly recommend to use a shared path. If required, a NAS storage, that would also work, but just make sure it should be shared path so that we can have access to it. Now, once you've configured your forensic path, make sure to do a test connect. And as you can see, connection is succeeded, and you can click on OK. So once you've done all the changes, make sure to click on deploy, click on OK, and wait for the status to go from in progress to success, and that should be deployed. And that's it for the initial DLP configuration, guys. Once all this is set, you are ready to start deploying your agents, crafting your policies, and protecting your sensitive data. Now, if you found this walkthrough helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment if you have any questions. As always, I'll try to answer as many as I could. And I'll see you guys in the next video.